Workshop.
Workshop. I guess my concern would be that, and my biggest focus point would be the sale of the surplus lands, or community lands as we call them. And if this meeting helps to inform that, which basically you're suggesting, I'm all for it. I think that is something that we were focused on our strategic capital plan, which has taken a bit longer than we anticipated to do it. So I see possibly this being a next step in the process, which also informs our strategic capital plan as well. So I'm behind this 100%.
Behind what?
Behind the aspect of getting a meeting, a workshop set up sometime in the near future.
Just to clarify, this is the public workshop where all of these points are presented to the public, and at the end of the workshop, ideally, the public has made a determination of how to proceed.
The wider the audience, the better, because it has to be carried by people. We have to remind ourselves nothing in Snug Cove can happen without a referendum. So unless Bowen Islanders, the majority by Bowen Islanders, support it, buy into it, and carry it, we cannot do anything, no matter what decision we make. So it is Bowen Islanders who ultimately make the decision, and the more we can integrate them into the decision making, the better.
I agree fully, and I think the sooner the better.
I'm going to weigh in here. I think the workshop on the surplus lands, or community lands, if you will, is an important topic. I think it's really an important topic that should be dealt with after certain other more important topics are dealt with, including your reference to the strategic plan, which I see nothing in this agenda about the strategic plan. Also, I think at the moment we're in a very difficult situation with the budget, where we've got a finance committee that's working very hard on the topic. We've got our director of finance working very hard on the topic. Without a budget in place, we can't make any decisions on surplus lands or on anything else. And that's part of the whole problem. I made certain recommendations to the municipal clerk to include in the agenda. I see nothing in there except somewhere at the end before adjournment. There's myself making comments on some of these things that are, I think, very important. There's no comments. There's nothing about what we should do about the ferry system, which incidentally, for those of you who don't know, the conversion to LNG is being delayed until 2014. So that's a topic that's not going to be dealt with. But the ferry itself, as well as ferry marshalling, we've started down that road. That's also mixed in with Snug Cove, and it seems to be forgotten in this agenda. And there are a ton of other things that we got to deal with, which have been given to municipal clerk to include in the agenda. It's not in the agenda. I didn't draft the agenda. That would be Councillor Dunce who drafted the agenda. I don't, quite frankly, understand why Snug Cove takes precedence over strategic plan, nor do I understand why it takes precedence over the budget and how we're going to deal with the day-to-day matters here on the island. I do not understand that. I'm at a loss for words, I think we have to defer dealing with the Snug Cove plans, whether the upper part of Snug Cove or the lower part of Snug Cove, until such time as we deal with the things that are really important for the next 3 or 4 months. Any other comments?
Well, Mr. Mayor, just to remind you, you are actually on the agenda and to speak about the strategic plan.
Yeah, just somewhere.
You said the strategic plan is not on the agenda. Yes, you may not have read the agenda.
No, I've read the agenda.
10.1.
I've read the agenda. It's just before closing.
Just
closing
before
the council. Thanks.
No, at 10.1.
Yeah, and 11 is what?
At, so you're on the agenda.
Right.
And I want to remind you that,
You don't have to remind me of anything.
Okay, then I remind myself that we are all very much aware of the need to have a budget, but the surplus lands and the disposal of those lands are the most important part of budget considerations. So they are not mutually exclusive, not at all.
Councillor Jennings and then Morris, and then could I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate the connectivity of the surplus lands to the budget process, and that I believe that as the Finance Committee is working away on the evaluation thereof, that the surplus land study on the ground can be done to dovetail with that. So I very much think that there's a connectivity there that's essential for the Finance Committee to conclude their findings. Thank you.
The preliminary strategic plan we've got has the community lands as an item in there. As well, the Finance Committee will be looking at that. It's not the top priority because getting the budget out of the way is, to the extent that we need monies of any kind to do work to advance the sale of the community lands or the development of, we will need a budget line item to reflect that. On an education perspective, perhaps not a workshop, but a committee of the whole meeting where the planner brings council up to speed on the Snug Cove master plan, the bylaw that is got first reading to develop Lot 3, so there is something that's what I'll call the government term almost shovel ready. And the working and the report from the Surface Lands Working Group that analyzed the properties. There's also a report from the former Director of Public Works that analyzed the cost of servicing the various pieces of property. So I would think before we get into a half-day workshop to say how do we go forward, we need a half-day education session up to date and everybody having a level playing field with all the knowledge. And I totally agree that fair marshalling is one of the decisions that has to be made. And as part of it, I would like to see us have the knowledge session sooner rather than later, and so that we can identify any monies that we need to put in the budget so that we can move forward. But I'm not sure that we need a total community workshop at this point.
I'll just, before we jump in, I think there's a way to marry both at one end of the spectrum what Wolfgang is suggesting, and the other end what the mayor is suggesting, and that is the budget process has to be done first. We all know that, I think. At least I think we do. The budget process has an end date. We know that. So the idea of having, and I think Allison's revised version of this, where we have education sessions and then actual roll up your sleeve sessions, is a good idea. But we know that they have to occur at different times. So knowing that we're having meetings every 2 to 3 weeks, why not
just schedule these meetings for third week in March. And if things aren't at the point where we can proceed, we actually delay it or just abandon it, but that we actually pencil in the days. Sorry, well, whatever. Yeah, that's my piece.
I was just going to reiterate what we just heard from Councillor Stone, Morris, and Jennings, and that the suggestion that we address the planning issues and you marry the Snug Cove planning issues and you marry that in with the strategic plan and the budget. They're all concurrent, and nothing that's been said today is in opposition with each other. It's just how do you blend those together. So the notion that I think it's really important that a planning workshop occurred led by CAO and the Director of Planning, possibly, where you're highlighting quite a number of the topics that are being raised today and highlighting how those marry in with the longer strategic plan. I think the strategic planning priority session that was held a number of weeks ago identified the community land sale or surplus land sale as stated by Councillor Dunst, and in marrying that in with the community center. So that led to the recognition that you were going to do a more elaborate strategic planning process 2 or 3 months down the road once the budget and really an understanding of the money that was available from a capital or project planning level. So they marry together. So it's just a question of designating when, as Councillor Stone was mentioning, where you schedule that in. So they complement each other, and there's nothing that's in opposition here, I don't believe. It's just a question of scheduling. Yes.
I agree. I think that community input actually could be quite valuable in terms of further developing the strategic plan and informing the budget. If we know what the community is prepared to accept with respect to the surplus lands, that allows us to move forward.